How's it going, YouTube? Come on, today with another video, and today, guys, the brand new is going to be the deck vault. Now, I have 3 decks that I want to show you today that I think are going to be very viable moving forward, and I put a lot of thought into these because I think that they all have a lot of potential right now, and they're things that I would consider playing at an event if I went to one in the next couple weeks. The only thing I have coming up right now, I believe, is a regional, and that's it for the year, because I don't play remote events. It's just not my thing. I have taken a pretty large hiatus, but it's just because, like, I haven't really been vibing with the game, so there hasn't really been much for me to do with the game or with content. To be honest, I just need that break sometimes, right? Just kind of focused harder on life, and it was good. It was good. And looking back into the format and what I would do moving forward, these are the decks that I would play, and I'll explain why. If you haven't already checked out my sponsors over on Gem, Cloud, Arla, Imperium, Dragonshield, RW, MainPhaze, or Grimoire, definitely go ahead and do so down below in the description. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so we can hit our goal at 30,000. Now let's hop right into the video. The first deck that I have for you today is going to be Striker. Now, this is always going to be the homebrew of the channel. Striker is the deck that kind of made the channel too, and that's something that I do enjoy still using from time to time. So, I do want to go over an updated list with you. I've seen lists with Fallen and Virtuous. I don't believe that that's the way to play the deck. We used to play Offerings to the Doomed, which is a very similar situation, except Fallen does replace itself, which is cool. I also think that Super Poly is just the MVP right now, so playing anything else that would hinder my spots in the extra deck doesn't really make sense to me. So playing Super Poly over Fallen right now is a lot better. I see a lot of people on the triple upstart. I also don't really like that at all. I think that's really bad, especially if you're playing into Droll. There are cards in this deck that will play into Droll, but like, even if you rip Desires, right? You Desires and then they Droll, and then you can chain something like the Radiant Typhoon if you just drew into it, right? Obviously, you would rip it in the draw phase if you had it. But even post-side, we're trying to play cards like Salesman, but I do like 2-Potted Desires. It always felt correct, and this will always be the biggest argument that I get into with my friends, is that I always believe in 2 Desires, not 3. But I do think this is the most optimal way to run the deck right now. I have never and will never believe in 2 Lemnis Gate. You should just play 1. It's an option. It should not be the main focus. The card is very strong for what it does, but the card is most definitely a one-of. Droplet, of course, another quick play spell that's really strong, especially working well with the Radiant Typhoon card. I've seen people play little to no hand traps, but I still believe in Fua. I think the card is still obnoxious to play through and something that can really slow your opponent down after this deck can already OTK, so that's something that you want to keep in mind as well. Post side, we do have Silent Graveyard, which is a quick play spell in the sideboard. I think that's really strong. It's another way just to say, hey, I'm going to play Inscription without Inscription, because most of the time you're just saying no graveyard effects. So this is a way to just go ahead and do that without having to rely on it being a normal spell to start in main phase 1. It's something that you can draw into and use going first or going second. I like the card a lot. I think that it's something that is really, really strong. And it's something, too, where if you run into, like, Mitsurugi, it makes your matchup a whole lot easier because they can't use their grave effects. Hamp is just in case you play against, like, Lunalight, and then we have the different Dimension Ground, of course. Not much else to say here about Striker. The deck itself is pretty solved. It's something that has a lot of innovation behind it and can keep innovating, but for the most part, the deck is pretty much what it is. But one of the decks right now that's still being up for debate is Maliss, and I think that I've cracked the code with this deck because it's something that we used to do and something that we need to go back to. And that's going to be playing multiple Bestials. I think right now, if you play Maliss, you're in a really good position because you can play multiple Bestials and they just help you out in the long run. But not only that, you're playing Super Poly in this deck, so you can pitch a name on a hand, get a monster on board with the Super Poly, then Bestial away the name engrave, and then have 3 bodies on the board immediately. So that's something that's really strong. Playing a lure as well with less people playing the Lancey on their side deck. This is something that you can get away with at tournaments because a lot more people are not going to be able to punish you as much because this is not really that much of a threat in the meta at the moment because not many people are preparing for it. Impulse is still a really broken card. Deck Lockdown on the side. I still like the D ground here, and then you're playing the Judgment as well, just as the one-of. You can play it in Striker too, but I just like it as a one-of. And then you also have the Drolls. The extra deck is pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot of changing that really could be done. If you want to play like different variants, you can. But the rest of this is pretty bread and butter. But the main deck, I think, is something that you really want to focus on. Is a ton of Bestials, Super Poly Impulse. This deck is still really strong right now and something that you should consider. Now for the deck that I've been getting tons and tons and tons of messages about, K9 Thunder. K9 Thunder is a deck that I was very proud of, and it's something that I put together and it's worked out for me really well. Now, I have made a bunch of changes to the deck, and it's something that we will go over here. So, I did add in the quick play spell because I do believe going quick play into the Jax is really crazy. The double pop is really nice. I did take an idea from Tom Box on playing Trap Trick Mind Crush because going first, you're always going to get the option to check your opponent's hand with Noroi. So, the second you look at their hand, you can call whatever you need to, right? And that's pretty broken. Even if you call like Dark Ruler and then your opponent draws a card, you're still hitting both. Now, the biggest complaint with Mind Crush is, what if your opponent is not honest, right? Because you can't like look at their hand anymore, which is just insane. I don't like how they did that at all. It just ruins the integrity of the game. I think that's something that even at that point in time, right, they're still not able to use it, right? Even if they try to like lie, they still can't use it, because if they use it like later on that turn, right, like I'm calling Judge 10 out of 10 times. So Mind Crush is really optimal in a deck like this because you do get to peep the hand. So that's something that is really, really awesome for the deck. I like this card a lot. Being able to just look at your opponent's hand and be like, I want to rip out Habakiri, or I want to rip out your one starter or your one breaker, right? It's going to be really strong, especially if they do have like a Dark Ruler in hand, right? And you have double Colossus on board, you can just stare at them and be like, yeah, you're not using that. I did add back in the Small Worlds. I think Small World is too good. And I'm also playing the Spell Canceller, not the Hasty Horse. I had less room in my sideboard, and I want to make sure I had the Spell Canceller somewhere in the deck list. I do have it in the main deck right now. I think that it's worth having as a 1-of slot because it's the same thing as playing Mjolnir. It's like, if you're going first, it's broken to have in the deck, right? But if you're going second, it's whatever. It's fine. You're just playing it because it's really broken. But you're playing Saryuya again, and you're having the Small World. So the amount of times that you could potentially draw into it or open it are pretty high. So you're at least going to be able to lock your opponent out with Colossus and or the Spell Canceller, which I think is really notable and really good. Tons of Bestials on the side. I think this deck is just like super interactive and something that you can have a lot of hand traps in. It's fine. A lot of decks right now that get punished by Bestials, I think they're very strong right now. But having the Ash Droll and the Fua is really strong too. And the deck itself is just so consistent that I think that this is one of the most optimal lists that you could play. Definitely let me know what you think about this deck in particular down below in the comment section, just because I love this deck so much, and I keep hearing about all of your guys' success with the deck so far, which is really cool, and I love to hear it. But I love this deck. I think that it's very, very strong. Definitely go ahead and check out my Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Instagram. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm going to try to be posting a little bit more often, slowly acclimating back into the game after about 20 days. So just trying to get my feet back and then start getting in some practice games and really ramping back up. But I do appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.